Okay, thank you, Dwayne. This is the City of Yankton Health Board meeting for Wednesday, February 17th. We had to reschedule this meeting. We had it scheduled yesterday, but being uncertain about our potential for rolling blackouts or power failures, we just wanted to make sure that we had a time where we could hold the meeting and make sure everyone could be there online and watch online. So we don't anticipate there to be any kind of technical difficulty. So we are live streaming, just so everyone knows that. And since it's been another couple of weeks since we've convened, I'll let the public know that the voting members of the health board are myself, Amy Leone, as the city manager, our mayor, Nathan Johnson, who's here, and then an appointed individual, Dr. Mary Milroy, who's also here with us. We have ex officios, Dave Mingo from Community Development, Brad Bees in Community Development, Jason Foote from the Yankton Police Department, and Ross Denherter, who is our city attorney, is an ex officio, and he may hop on as well. Katie Huff, who is a palliative care nurse with Avera, is also an ex officio. I have not heard whether or not she'll be joining us this evening or not. We have 2 orders of business today. The first would be a follow-up from the City Commission's first reading relating to the extension of the masking ordinance. And so I'll give a little history of that, and then we can talk about that. The second is to talk a little bit about a resolution that was submitted, drafted and submitted by one of our city commissioners, Commissioner Maibaum. So we'll tackle those things today and see if we have some feedback for the city commission. So I know everyone on the call and in the meeting knows this, but just to, I guess, brief the public that might be watching, there is a mask ordinance in place that was passed by the city commission back in December. And that tentative expiration date was in the ordinance was set for March the 1st, Monday, March 1st. So as that date draws closer, we put that ordinance back on the agenda to determine whether or not the commission would like to extend that date of the mask ordinance. So initially, the recommendation that we put forward for first reading with the health board's approval from our last meeting was to put that date as May 28th. And at the time, our thought was, based on the number of vaccinations going on, based on the fact that we still have active cases, etc. The first reading was conducted on that ordinance on Monday, February 8th. And along with that, there was a lot of discussion that occurred at the meeting. And through that discussion, staff got a couple of different directives, and I think we've followed through on those. So I do want to provide that information to the health board members and talk about that just so that we all can see and understand what we've been working on based on the directions that we believe we got as a staff after that first reading to dig a little deeper into this with the health board. So the first was just that we continue to meet more actively as a health board, which I've scheduled, and we're going to put health board recommendation on as a meeting agenda item as we continue through this pandemic. So if there are things that we want to meet and talk about, some weeks there may be a need to, some weeks there may not be, and sometimes we'll have a recommendation, sometimes we will not. So that was the first directive. The second directive was, and I think we did what we were asked to, is that we identify potentially some metrics, community metrics, as local of metric as possible, regarding statistics or numbers that might trigger different decisions or might help the commission reach a decision regarding the mask ordinance. So I'm going to let Brad Bees share his screen, and I'll explain the metrics that we developed, and then I'll talk a little bit about whom I shared those with, and we can talk about those a little bit. So these are not highly complicated, and I will tell everyone that's watching that that's on purpose. with the exception of Dr. Milroy, these highly complex medical studies are above what is above what we can interpret and analyze and relay to the public in a meaningful way. So as we went back as a staff, we thought, it's really best that we make sure these are easy for anybody to understand, and of course for our medical community to interpret as well. We also know they're not perfect metrics, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we get to each one. There's 3 of them. The first one is a vaccination rate. So I call this the Cheerio graph. And so our goal was that prior to recommending that the commission consider lifting ordinance, that we reach that 50% of vaccination. And you see here, we're right at about 15% as of yesterday. So these will be updated every Monday. And so that goal is not achieved. So either that goal or the following to be met. So the second one is the active case numbers. So we went on the active case numbers in Yankton County below 25 for 3 consecutive weeks. And we chose 3 weeks on purpose. We chose 3 weeks of the COVID because we felt that the course COVID-19 illness is typically that period, or at least that's what the initial recommended quarantine period was. Some people, I'm sure, have a shorter course of illness. Some people maybe have longer recovery, but we've been going with the 14 days. And so we thought if we have a 3-week tracking period, we can see what the case numbers are. And great news, this number is going down, and it keeps going down. Even from when we started talking about these metrics, it's gone down. So that's great news. We're very happy about that. But that goal is not quite achieved yet. The last goal would be hospitalizations. And we thought we should, drilling down to as local as we could on that, would be hospitalizations at Avera Sacred Heart. And so we know that some people that are hospitalized at Avera Sacred Heart might not be from Yankton County. We understand that. And we don't have information about where people are from. We just know the numbers reported by Avera Sacred Heart. But we also know that some people from Yankton that might be ill with COVID-19 might be hospitalized in a different facility. So that's not a perfect statistic, but we thought it was a good guideline and easy to understand, and it's data that's right here in our backyard that we can tangibly hang on to. So that we set also for that same 3-week period, hospitalizations under 3 for 3 consecutive weeks. And for 2 weeks now, we've been at 0. And the week prior, we were at 1. So that goal has been achieved. So our initial thought was these are some criteria we can put forward to the commission to consider. And if either the Cheerio goal or the vaccination goal is met, or the combination of the second and third metric is met, we could recommend perhaps this was a good time to lift that ordinance. But also I wanted to follow direction, and this is a big but here, that we farm these out to other people. So it's not just us, because with the exception of Dr. Milroy, we're not medically trained people, and we farm these out to people. So I sent them out to healthcare professionals, both at Avera Sacred Heart Hospital as well as to Yankton Medical Clinic, to the health professionals there, to get some comment on these metrics. So to get an understanding of, okay, what do other people that have medical background believe? So the answer there was very interesting. So there was some that felt the metrics were reasonable and workable. So that gave me some confidence. But then also some felt like there's no metric right now that we should be using. In fact, the standard should be just leave the mask ordinance in place. And then there were some medical professionals that felt, no, I'm not so sure about these metrics. They're scientists, of course. So there may be like a more clear statistic than the hospitalized, or, you know, questions such as just because people are hospitalized doesn't necessarily mean aren't hospitalized doesn't mean the clinic isn't full. So that led me to say, wow, you know, there isn't a full consensus, even maybe among the medical community here locally, whom I trust wholeheartedly the level of care you can get in Yankton. And I know they care about us because they live here, and they're our friends and they're our neighbors, and they care about us. So I feel really good about asking those local healthcare providers. But even amongst them, there wasn't a consensus. So I took the third directive, which I understood to be, what are other cities doing with their mask ordinances, their mask policies? Where are they landing on these? Are they extending them? Are they not? And got even more information. So I'm just going to pull that up here. If you'll humor me for 1 second. I've got two screens, but I'm not so fast going between them. Okay. I did speak with a number of first-class cities. Brookings, the city of Brookings, did renew their ordinance. They extended it till the middle of April. Watertown never had an ordinance, but they did expect they are considering to expand their resolution, which we have in place as well, also a resolution, as you know, until the end of March. Mitchell's expired. They had a mask ordinance. Theirs expired the end of January. Vermilion extended theirs to the 1st of April. Spearfish and Rapid never got to the point of having any kind of ordinance or resolution even. They relied on the public education, although Rapid City did try to do that. In Huron, the mask mandate expires the same date ours does, March 1. Pierre never got there, and Madison as well never got there. In Sioux Falls, the ordinance is in place right now until the 13th of March. And they're doing the same thing our commission is doing. They're discussing what's going to happen next. Most of the cities I talked to said this is not an uncommon, you know, don't feel like you're alone in this, Yankton. This is a big, difficult decision. So I think those were all the directives that we were given, and we followed through on them, and we worked hard to try to disseminate and understand where we should go from here. So, you know, I really felt like these are good and easy to follow metrics and science if they follow your opinion. If they follow your opinion on where we should be with the masking. You know, I think that as we reach out to communities, we've learned that everybody's struggling with this decision. And this is not just a data-based decision. I don't think many medical decisions are just data-based. And certainly no community decisions are data-based. We all can easily find data and information, but there's a lot more that goes into those decisions than that. So, you know, we really know that hearts and minds have been made up about masking and masking ordinances long ago. I don't know that the ordinance at this point in the game will get anyone to wear a mask that isn't wearing a mask, or put one back on that's decided for them the risk is low. The education is out there. If you haven't seen any education on what to do with COVID-19, then I really think you haven't been paying attention, because we've all been living this for a year. So I think, especially since this ordinance does not have enforceability by law other than with trespass, I think that it certainly isn't going to, at this point, especially with these low numbers that we're experiencing, is going to get folks to put on a mask that have already decided that this is not for them. So, you know, I think from my perspective, the health board should really consider what our recommendation should be to the city commission, knowing all of these things and knowing that, you know, expanding an ordinance may get us exactly, or extending an ordinance may get us exactly where we are today, a month from now or 2 months from now. And knowing that in some regard, people just want this, I think, discussion to be off the shelf for them to make their own decisions. That's the comment that I've really heard the most. Of course, I've heard a lot of extremes on either end, mask ordinance and non-mask ordinance. But for the most part, I've heard this overwhelming sense of, you know, we don't want this burden on our community, because it's come down to a lot of discussion in organizations, amongst neighbors, amongst friends, even across dinner tables. And I think everyone's ready to, you know, continue to work together as a community on this, continue to support our healthcare providers, continue to support each other, and not necessarily beholden to this ordinance that has been quite controversial. So those are the directives that we took as a staff and we followed. So I'd like to get a little bit of discussion from the health board, from the members, voting members, and the ex officios regarding their thoughts and feelings, and then we'll see if we have, you know, a motion to make on what to recommend for the commission's second reading of that ordinance, which will be on Monday, the 22nd.
I guess I'll make a comment in that I'll begin by saying certainly this is a really a public health crisis. And when you look at this from the public health point, the case for masking is very strong. I will say that I am a strong proponent of masking. And I think when we look at it being really the proven effective, accessible way to decrease infection and spread in the community, I guess I'm very happy that the mask mandate was in place. I think that it has had a remarkable improvement in the crisis in our community. I think now, however, we're at a little different point in that our numbers are much better, and that I do think it's a good idea for our committee to take kind of a new look at, you know, maybe the mandate, having it be an ordinance or a resolution is a good time to discuss some of that. I would say that I think what you were saying, Amy, was very good in that it has been pretty divisive in the community, and that as a health committee, we also look at I guess the well-being of the community too. And so I am glad we're getting here together to rediscuss really what recommendation to make, and whether it should be a ordinance or a resolution. And I agree that I think that we do need to make I wouldn't drop both, because I think we're not out of the woods yet. And I think that every expert at this time is saying, don't drop your guard too much. You know, and even Josh Clayton from the South Dakota Department of Health recently said South Dakota could be a soft target for some of the new variants. So I would say we need to keep a very strong recommendation from the city in place. And I know that people will certainly continue to make their own individual decisions, which is their right. And I would say that we need to certainly continue to support the community in showing good common sense in their decisions. If they're sick, to stay home. I think we should continue to strongly endorse the wearing of masks, and maybe even consider double masking, as the CDC has recently come out and suggested with some of the variants. Social distancing is still important. It's not an either or. It's a masking and distancing. It's and avoiding crowds. and continuing hygiene. And I think we need to reiterate that we stand firmly behind those principles. We're not out of the woods. But at this time, I think that it is good to entertain a discussion at this time when we're not in a crisis. I think when we passed the ordinance, our hospital was full. Our numbers were quite high. We were considered an area of substantial spread. I think the efforts that have been done have mitigated the situation in a very positive, encouraging way. But I don't want us to relax things too much. So I'm glad we're discussing this. We're in a little different point at this time. And fortunately, we're in a much better spot. Our numbers are better. So I think that that's good to entertain the thought of maybe looking more at a resolution versus an ordinance.
First of all, I want to thank Amy and the staff for working really hard on those metrics and the other research that was done. If you watched the commission meeting last week, you may have sensed my frustration when we were tasked with coming up with the metrics of when we thought masks were no longer needed, because I felt it was kind of an impossible task, since the CDC doesn't have guidance on that, WHO doesn't have guidance on that. Because it's complicated. It's not just a matter of looking at numbers. It's a bigger picture consideration of what we know now and what we know 2 weeks from now. So I think those metrics are important and certainly tell a story. Just not sure if it's, like Amy said, it can tell whatever story you might want it to tell. So during and after last week's commission meeting, I really tried to listen and process what I had heard. And it was obvious that compared to where we were in December, there was more uncertainty amongst commissioners about where we should go next. And I guess my concern in this is, I think it's pretty safe to say we would not have united support for continuing the mandate through the end of May. And so if we continue to have these types of discussions, it almost looks like the commission is fighting over whether people should wear masks or not. And that's definitely not what I heard. All of the commissioners have said that they support masking. They believe it works. So if we keep debating whether we should have an ordinance, which is law but has no enforcement mechanism, so people are essentially choosing whether they follow it or not, or whether we move forward with a resolution that allows more commissioners to get behind it and be comfortable with that, because they struggle with the mandate part of it. So if we're able to get more commissioners and a more united message behind recommending masking going forward, to me, it seems like there is value in that, and that it does help us keep the community where we believe we need to be right now. Because, like has been mentioned, there are variants out there that are causing the epidemiologists that I follow regularly a lot of concern, because they are afraid that these variants could move faster than our vaccination efforts. So I think, in the strongest terms possible, we need to recommend that people continue following CDC recommendations that will evolve over time. They have evolved, they'll continue to evolve. And so I agree the best way to do that at this point may be foregoing the mandate language, the ordinance, and instead focusing on the existing resolution.
I'd like to hear a little bit from our ex officios, and I do want to mention, Mayor, that you said that basically Dwayne and Dave and Brad and Kristen did the impossible. So if you need impossible things done, you can ask these 4 people. But I do still like the metrics. They tell a story. I just don't know what story they tell. But let's start with Brad. Brad, do you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
You know, I won't belabor any of the points that the three of you have gone through, because I would say that I tend to agree with everything you've said, and I honestly think I'm going to repeat myself from the last time, which is I don't know that a decision or a recommendation here is going to change what I understand and the way that my family is responding. But I do hope that maybe there's a sliver of daylight ahead of us where we can get back to a sense of community and talking together in a respectful and reasonable way, that maybe this direction is pointing us there. And if that's the case, then I'm wholeheartedly in support of something pointing us in that direction.
Thanks, Brad. Jason, how about your perspective?
I don't think I could say it any better than anybody else has, especially Brad. He said it pretty good there. I go out in the public, I see people that aren't wearing masks. It's usually the same people. They're not going to change their mind, ordinance, or resolution. We take precautions for the people that we love, and we'll do what we need to do. Those that want to make their decision to not wear it is their decision. I think having something in place like a resolution like we had before is still effective just as much as an ordinance would be.
Thank you, Jason. Dave, do you have a comment?
Just a couple things. It's been mentioned here, we do have a resolution currently in place that was adopted quite a while ago. And people have chosen their path when addressing this issue. I hope, as Brad mentioned, that as a community we can be sensitive to everybody's thoughts about the issue. I think we're at a point right now where the term ordinance is producing a situation where people want to either go way one direction or way the other. So considering that people have made up their minds substantially to this point and how things are looking, I think the existing resolution is doing the job that the community needs to do.
Thank you, Dave. Ross, would like to hear from you. And our ordinance that was, or excuse me, our resolution 2026 that was passed in April would still be in place. This is just a clarification question. My understanding is it would still be in place regardless of what action the commission takes on Monday.
That is correct, unless, of course, the resolution itself is changed, which the commission has the ability to do. But the commission has never revoked it. I think the guidance is still prudent guidance, although I think it may need some sprucing up because we have 8 months or 10 months of evolution in the proper way to approach and protect ourselves from COVID-19. But the resolution itself is still good advice to the community. So beyond that, I don't know that I have anything more to add to the discussion than what's already been presented. I could get behind the commission going either direction on this.
Thanks, Ross. I think
Yep.
one thing that's important too to remember is that as a community and our health board advocating the vaccine and promoting folks to register for the vaccine, my understanding is folks that are 65 and up are now eligible to start making their registration. We've had the good fortune of, because of the line of work that they're in, our law enforcement and our first responders be able to access vaccine. I think we have healthcare workers vaccinated who want to be. So we're working towards that goal, and I think advocating that can also be a very good role for us to play. Now, certainly there'll be folks who feel the same way about the vaccine that they do about masking, and that's okay. What isn't okay is to stop working together and to continue to, you know, stir up a dialogue that isn't useful or productive for anyone. So we want to promote our healthcare folks. We want to promote our community, and we want to, you know, help each other. And that's what we're really about here. And that's part of health too, I think. So I think that's what I'm hearing from the members of the health board and what I'm hearing from the community. So you know, I do hope that as we continue to discuss and continue to meet, which is probably a good idea as we continue through this pandemic, that we do continue to focus on the CDC recommendations, the health of our community, our local healthcare providers who we know care about us and our families, and that we're also being very careful about, you know, how we educate folks about getting access, and we help each other get access to, you know, vaccine. I know I had a nice discussion with our library this morning, and they're getting lots of questions, and they're have reached out to Avera about, hey, can we help get people registered? Can we help show them how to do that with the technology? And so, you know, I don't think, one thing I've learned about a pandemic that I didn't know before is that this is not a light switch where you turn things on and off. It just doesn't work that way. And I wish it did, because if it did, I would have turned it off a long time ago. You know, we're all tired. It's a dial. And I think we, you know, have to move the dial according to where our community is and what's right for us. And that's what I think we're proposing here. So with that, I would like to make an alternative recommendation to what we recommended to the commission earlier, and recommend that they allow that resolution, allow the ordinance, the mask ordinance to expire and not take action on February 22nd. Let that expire on March 1, 2021. I believe it's 12/01 it would expire. If they take no action, it would just expire by the by default. And if the commission wants to conduct the public hearing, it may do so. However, you know, I don't know if they're not going to take action, if that's necessary or not, but we did publish it, so they may want to have that listening time with the community. But my recommendation, if there is a second, would be that we allow that, recommend to the commission that they allow that mask ordinance to expire.
I would go ahead and second that. And as we do that, I just wanted to mention too, thank you to Amy and the staff for all the work they did on developing the metrics, because I think that one of the other things that the city commission asked us to do was to meet more frequently and to kind of stand by and really monitor, since it is such an ongoing moving target. And I think those will be extremely helpful tools as we continue to meet and monitor the situation. So thank you for all the hard work, and in the impossible situation of coming up with a magic number, which I don't think exists. So anyway, but I'm happy to make a second to your motion. And so.
Any other discussion points anyone wants to make? Otherwise, I'll call a vote.
Yeah, again, I think it is going to be helpful that we meet more often to keep an eye on things and advise the community on what Dr. Milroy and other members of the medical community have to say, depending on what's occurring. And hopefully it's smooth sailing from here out, but that's certainly not a guarantee. And I certainly want to stress that please follow the CDC recommendations that we've all heard about a million times at this point. I feel like there's one other thing I wanted to say. Oh, the resolution that's in place, you know, is that something that maybe at a future meeting we could look at just to see if a few things do need sprucing up, like Ross mentioned?
Yeah, so I think, and this will kind of bleed into our next conversation as well, but I think with this recommendation, the most prudent thing to do from our commission procedure standpoint is to, see how the commission, what action the commission takes based on our recommendation, and based on whatever action that is, if they allow it to expire then on March 1, our current resolution is in place, and then determine, does our resolution need to be taken off the shelf and revised, or is it adequate? Is there something new that we want to put information in, or does it want to be totally kind of revamped? But I don't think it's fair to the commission or the public to muddy that right now and create even more confusion. So what I would recommend is we get through this hurdle here first, see where they go. If they do decide to expand and extend that mask ordinance, then the resolution discussion is a moot point. So that's kind of where I see that playing. Okay, so with that, we're voting on the motion to recommend to the City Commission that it allow the mask ordinance to expire on its original date, which was March 1st. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed with the same sign. Okay, so that is the recommendation I will put in my report to the commission. I'll update our metrics on Monday, so there'll be new numbers on Monday, and I'll explain the same things to them that I explained to us. Our next order of business is the resolution that Commissioner Maibaum provided us, and he also provided some additions to it, and I have read it. I'm sure you all have too. My thought is, again, whether we change any resolution or replace a resolution, we need to have more conversation about, depending upon how the commission acts, but certainly willing to hear everyone's thoughts on that.
I think
Yeah, I
would
think
agree
we can.
with you.
Yeah, we can leave it sit for now.
Dr. Milroy, I didn't quite hear what your thought was there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they need to resolve the ordinance issue first, and then we can look at the resolution, whether we are going to recommend just keeping the current one in place, whether we revise the current one, or we go with Commissioner Maibaum's. But I think that is a separate issue, and I completely agree with you about not muddying it, just tackling one and then moving on to the other.
How about our ex officios on that topic? Brad, do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I think it's been a confusing topic for everyone over time, and that seems like a simpler way to wade through the sometimes confusing order of doing city business.
Yeah.
It's a very nice way to put that. Jason?
I would just echo that same sentiment. So don't want to waste anybody's time here.
Yeah, and we do have another meeting scheduled yet already on Monday. We won't know anything different on Monday on that front, but if we're going to meet on Mondays, we'll have plenty of time if we need to visit about that. Dave, Mingo?
Yeah, just procedurally, it just makes more sense to have the ordinance issue decided before we consider any other action.
Mr. Denherter, this will all fall in your lap, of course, regardless of how this all comes together. So,
Yeah, I also agree with that approach. I think there's some confusion to the community if we try to mix and match the ordinance and the resolution discussion at the same time. I think it's better to take care of one and then the other. Don't mix them up in one meeting.
I don't think then that there is actually a recommendation on that resolution at this point, other than that we need to act on, other than I will just verbally let the commission know that we want to wait and see where they head with the ordinance before we talk about the resolution. So with that, are there any other matters that we want to visit about this evening? Otherwise, we'll meet back here again on Monday and talk about some new metrics, but we'll just probably be a review of of where we're headed. Maybe I'll have heard some feedback on your recommendation from the commission by that time. Okay. Very good then. I will look then for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I'll
Okay.
second.
You two are the only ones that can do it if I ask for it. So, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you very much. This will conclude the health board meeting, and we will talk again on Monday afternoon, and we'll get that link set out to everybody. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.